The courtroom is silent, except for the sound of Christine Brown's breath, shallow and sharp, like each inhale costs her something. Across from her sits Cody, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes cold. For years they had shared a home, children, and a faith, but today they share nothing except the truth that is about to destroy everything. The judge raises her gavel. Case number 24-113, Brown versus Brown. The sound of wood on wood cracks through the air, and in that instant, every secret, every lie, every tear from the sister wives' family is dragged into the light. And trust me, what's about to come out in this courtroom will change how you see them forever. It's a gray morning in Flagstaff, Arizona. Condensation fogs the courthouse windows, the kind that blurs reality into shapes of uncertainty. Reporters stand shoulder to shoulder outside, cameras aimed like rifles. "The Sister Wives Trial," one headline reads. Inside, Christine walks with her lawyer, her steps heavy, her eyes red but fierce. She's not here to cry anymore. She's here to fight. Voice brightens slightly. Conversational, inviting tone. It's a day that feels impossible for people who have followed their journey of years of plural marriage, of laughter and heartbreak and separation, all culminated to this. Cody Brown, once the proud patriarch of a spiritual family, stands accused by his former wives of betrayal, coercion, and emotional manipulation. Robin's arrival sends a murmur through the courtroom. In a navy blue suit, she trembles as she sits down behind Cody. Her eyes flicker to Christine and down. Mary and Janelle sit on the far side together, united in a fragile, firm alliance, changed to tense, cinematic narration. When the judge speaks, her voice slices the tension like glass. This court will determine the legality of property transfers, child custody arrangements, and alleged emotional damages caused by the dissolution of the plural marriage. A murmur sweeps through the room. Emotional damages? One reporter whispers. Christine's chin rises. Her lawyer, a woman named Dana, with an even tone, straightens her notes. "Your Honor," she begins, "this isn't just divorce. This is about years of coercion disguised as faith. About promises broken in the name of spiritual union." Cody snorts loudly. "Objection!" his attorney fires. "This is a family dispute, not a psychological autopsy." The judge raises an eyebrow. Overruled. Continue. Dana's voice stabilizes. "My client was subjected to years of emotional manipulation, told to smile while breaking inside. We will present evidence in letters, recordings, and financial documents how Mr. Brown manipulated his wives for personal gain under the banner of religion." Cody's knuckles whiten. "That's a lie," he mutters, low but audible. Voice is soft, emotional, thoughtful. Christine's heart pounds as images flash. Cody's promises, the sleepless nights she spent crying solo while he went to see Robin, the family meetings full of guilt and pressure. She used to think leaving him was the hardest part. She was wrong. The thought of facing him now, seeing the man who once called her his spiritual soulmate look at her like a stranger, is just unbearable. Soft, empathic narration. Behind her, Janelle squeezes her hand. A silent glance exchanged between them. No words, just strength. "Mrs. Brown," says the judge, "please take the stand." The courtroom leans forward. Christine rises. She takes the oath, her voice steady but low. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." Voice shifts to tense, intimate tone. Dana steps closer. "Christine, can you describe when you first realized your marriage to Mr. Brown was no longer equal?" Christine's lips tremble. "The night he told me love should be earned." The audience murmurs. Cody stares straight ahead. She continues, "That's when I understood. Love in his world wasn't shared. It was controlled." Now, Christine's case, from a legal standpoint, is not an easy one. There isn't any official marriage license with Cody. The marriages are spiritual. Hence, this battle rides on property rights, emotional distress claims, and child support agreements. But it's so much more than money that's at stake. One's reputation, family relationships, the truth. Cody's attorney stands up, smirking. "Mrs. Brown, you say you're experiencing emotional distress, and yet after leaving, you proceeded to shoot a reality series about your life. How distressed were you, really?" Christine's eyes flash. "I shared my healing." "That's not distress. That's recovery." Gasps ripple through the gallery. The judge raises a hand. "Order." Robin shifts uncomfortably. Her face tightens as though she's swallowing something bitter. Voice lowers, more suspenseful. What no one in the room knows yet is that Robin's name is written on several of the disputed properties. And those documents, hidden for years, are about to surface. Voice quickens slightly, drama heightens. Christine steps out of the meeting for a recess, breathing cold desert air. The cameras swarm. She ignores them. Mary follows quietly. You did good in there, Mary says softly. Christine lets out a breath, almost a laugh. Did I? It feels like we're tearing open wounds that never healed. Mary looks down. Maybe they were never meant to. Brief reflective pause, then suspense builds again. Inside, Cody paces the hallway with Robin. His voice is sharp, low. They're trying to humiliate us. If those documents get shown, Robin interrupts, you said everything was in your name for tax reasons. Cody stops. It was. Until you signed them. Her eyes widen. What? You don't remember? The camera crews, the whispers all fade as she stares at him. Realization spreading like ice through her veins. Voice drops to whisper, suspenseful. If those papers show Robin's name tied to properties that were supposed to belong to all the wives, she could be accused of fraud. And Cody knows it. That's the moment the audience leans in, because betrayal inside betrayal always hits hardest. Court resumes. Christine sits up straight again. Donna approaches the bench. Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to introduce Exhibit C, a notarized deed transferring ownership of 3 family properties to Robin Brown, dated 6 months before Christine's separation. The courtroom gasps in shock. Robin's hand flies to her mouth. No, that's not... The judge bangs her gavel. Quiet! The color drains from Cody's face. Mr. Brown, Dana continues, is it true that these properties were originally purchased with joint family funds? Cody hesitates. They were family investments. Yet the deeds were signed over to one wife only, without the other's knowledge. Cody swallows hard. It was for convenience, nothing more. Dana tilts her head. Convenience or control? The silence is deafening, and just like that, the courtroom goes from silent tension to pure chaos. The kind of moment that viewers replay over and over again. As the session adjourns for the day, Christine walks out surrounded by murmuring reporters. Robin wipes away tears. Cody storms past the cameras silent. But in Christine's eyes, for the first time in years, there's calm. Not victory, just clarity. She turns away to the courthouse steps, still quietly whispering to herself, this isn't over. The next morning, the courthouse feels colder, sharper, as if even the walls know what's coming. Christine arrives early, holding a folder close to her chest. Inside are the documents that could turn the entire case upside down. She's quiet, but her silence isn't weakness, it's resolve. Cody enters minutes later, his expression unreadable, his hair slicked back like a man trying to control everything he's already lost. Cameras flash as he walks in beside Robin, their hands barely touching. Mary and Janelle follow together, the weight of shared history in every step. The energy in the courtroom is electric. Everyone senses that today, someone's going to break. When the judge calls the case back to order, the hum of whispers fades into an almost sacred silence. Dana, Christine's lawyer, rises and begins, Your Honor. Before we proceed, my client has obtained new evidence and email exchange between Mr. Brown and a family financial advisor dated 2 years before her separation. Cody stiffens instantly, jaw locking. Dana continues, in this correspondence, Mr. Brown refers to a plan to streamline ownership and protect assets from emotional instability. A murmur ripples through the gallery. Christine's eyes glisten, but she doesn't look at Cody, not yet. The judge raises a brow. Mr. Brown, is this email authentic? His attorney objects, but the judge allows it. Cody clears his throat. Those were business terms, nothing more. Dana's tone sharpens. Business terms? Or a coded plan to isolate one wife financially while favoring another? Cody's lawyer protests again, but Cody lifts a hand, silencing him. I was protecting what I built, Cody says, voice trembling with contained anger. Christine finally speaks, her voice soft but cutting. You mean protecting what you stole? Gasps fill the courtroom. Cody turns to her, eyes blazing. You never understood the bigger picture, Christine. You were emotional, reactive. You made everything harder for the family. She leans forward slightly. The family or your control over it? That one line lands like a stone dropped in still water, rippling through everyone in the room, even Robin, who looks like she's about to cry. And that's the moment viewers can feel it. A power shift so subtle yet undeniable, the first crack in Cody's armor finally showing. The judge calls for order as the tension thickens. Donna resumes. Your Honor, we also request to call Robin Brown to the stand. Robin's head snaps up, eyes wide. Cody whispers sharply, you don't have to do this. But Robin hesitates. If I don't, it looks worse, she whispers back. Slowly, she rises and walks to the stand. She takes the oath, her voice trembling, hands clasped together. Dana approaches gently at first. Robin, you've been part of this family the shortest amount of time, correct? Yes, she replies softly. And in those years, did you ever notice changes in how Cody treated the other wives? Robin glances toward Cody, then down. He was protective. Maybe too much sometimes. Protective of you? Robin nods slightly. He said the others were jealous. That they didn't respect the way I tried to keep peace. Christine's eyes close, just for a second, pain flickering across her face. Dana continues. And these properties. Did you know your name was being placed on deeds without the other wives' consent? Robin swallows hard. Not at first. I thought he'd discussed it with them. I only found out later. Cody shifts, anger flashing in his eyes. That's not true, he mutters, but the microphones catch it. Mr. Brown, the judge warns, control yourself. Robin's voice cracks. I didn't want this. I just wanted us to be a family, Christine whispers under her breath. A family built on lies. The courtroom holds its breath. Donna nods softly. Thank you, Robin. As Robin steps down, tears stream silently down her face, and she avoids looking at Cody. The emotional balance of the entire case just shifted, and everyone feels it like thunder before the storm. When the court breaks for lunch, Christine walks out to the courthouse steps, reporters shouting questions. Christine! How does it feel seeing Robin testify? She doesn't answer, just stares ahead. Mary catches up to her. You think she told the truth? Christine shrugs. Part of it. Maybe that's all any of us ever do inside. Cody sits in silence, staring at the wall. His lawyer leans in, whispering something, but Cody doesn't hear it. His mind is replaying Robin's testimony, her shaking voice, the disappointment in her eyes. For years, she was his ally, his shield. Now that shield is cracking. In the hallway, Janelle sits beside Christine. You know, she says softly, there was a time when I believed in him completely. I thought we were chosen. Special Christine nods. So did I. They share a moment of silence. The echo of footsteps fills the corridor as the bailiff announces recess is ending. Back inside, the air feels heavier, as if every secret in this family is pressing down on the room. Dana rises again. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Mary Brown. Mary looks startled but composed. She walks to the stand, smooths her skirt, and takes her oath. Mrs. Brown, Dana begins, you've known Cody the longest. How would you describe his behavior in the later years of your marriage? Mary pauses. Her voice is calm but hollow. He stopped looking at me the same way. It was like I'd become furniture in his house, useful but invisible. Cody's eyes dropped to the table. And when you confronted him about his relationship with Robin? Mary's lip trembles. He said I was being selfish. That love isn't divided, it's multiplied, but that's not how it felt. It felt like subtraction. The courtroom is silent again, hanging on every word. Dana asks gently, did you ever feel coerced to stay? Mary hesitates. Not coerced, condition. You're told leaving means losing your faith, your family, your identity, so you stay. Even when staying breaks you, that's the kind of truth that cuts deeper than evidence, because it's not just legal, it's human, and the audience feels every syllable of it. Cody looks shattered for a moment, but then something hardens inside him. He whispers to his lawyer, who stands and says, Your Honor, the defense will call its own witness, Mr. Cody Brown. The courtroom buzzes. Cody walks to the stand, shoulders squared, eyes flashing with a mix of pride and desperation. He swears the oath, his voice steady. His lawyer begins, Mr. Brown, can you explain your intentions behind the property transfers and your treatment of your wives? Cody nods, taking a breath. Everything I did was for order, for protection. The media doesn't understand what it's like to lead a plural family. It's chaos without structure. I made decisions for everyone's good. Dana interjects, everyone's good or your control? Cody snaps, you think control keeps a family together? Try managing 4 households, 15 children, and constant judgment. I did what I had to. His voice echoes. For a moment, there's silence. Then Kristen quietly says from her seat, "And in doing so, you lost every one of us." Cody freezes. The judge exhales slowly. "We'll take a short recess." Cody remains seated, staring down at the table, the weight of his choices pressing harder than ever before. And this is where everything teeters on the edge. Truth, lies, love, faith, all colliding in one room with nowhere left to hide. As the gavel strikes, Christine rises, walking into the hallway, her footsteps echoing as punctuation on a sentence still not finished. The reporters rush in again, flashes of light chasing her down the corridor, but she doesn't say a word. She just keeps walking. Her eyes front, her heart pounding, knowing the next session will decide everything, not just the verdict, but who she will be after the storm. Because what's about to happen next will not only expose the family's final secret, it will decide who walks out free and who doesn't walk out at all. The courtroom was abuzz long before the gavel struck. Whispers floated like static, carrying scraps of rumor about what might come next in the Reeves family trial. Christina sat ramrod straight in her chair, palms pressed flat on the table as if anchoring herself against the tide of noise. Across from her, Colton Reeves looked nothing like the man who once built dreams of eternal unity. His tie hung crooked, his eyes darting between the judge and the crowd in search of sympathy that had long since vanished. The youngest wife, Rowan, sat behind him clutching a crumpled tissue. Marin and Jana shared a silence so tight it could snap at any word. With a steady voice, the judge entered. Court is now in session. Dana Holt, the attorney for Christina, rose first, confidence curling through every word. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Mr. Colton Reeves back to the stand for cross-examination. A ripple of anticipation moved through the spectators. Everyone remembered his earlier outburst, the flash of temper that cracked the mask he'd worn for years. Colton adjusted his cuffs and walked forward, forcing a smile that fooled no one. Dana approached with deliberate calm. Mr. Reeves, yesterday, you said all financial transfers were for the good of the family. Is that right? He nodded stiffly. Then can you explain why funds from the communal account were wired to a private trust fund registered under your newest wife's name? 3 days after Christina asked for transparency, Colton hesitated, tongue pressing the inside of his cheek. Those were operating funds? Temporary. Dana lifted a document. Temporary funds that bought a lake house and a luxury SUV? The courtroom gasped, Rowan's head dropped, tears sliding down her face. Colton's voice cracked. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Christina's gaze stayed fixed, unwavering. We understand enough, Dana said quietly. You took what belonged to all of them and hid it under love. And right there, the air shifts. Everyone can feel the tension coil tighter like a string about to snap, drawing the audience closer without them even realizing they're holding their breath. Colton's lawyer objected, claiming emotional manipulation, but the judge waved him off. Mr. Reeves, answer the question. He swallowed hard. I was trying to protect what we built from impulsive decisions. Christina wanted to leave. She would have torn everything apart. Dana's eyes narrowed. So you decided to tear it apart first? Silence. The judge's gavel echoed once, and it sounded like a heartbeat. Christina's mind drifted for a split second to nights when Colton's laughter filled the kitchen, when they believed faith could hold 4 hearts together. That illusion now lay shattered across the courtroom floor. Dana turned, gesturing to the screen behind her. Your Honor, we'd like to play a recorded call between Mr. Reeves and Ms. Rowan Hart. Rowan's eyes shot wide. The judge nodded and the recording began. Colton's voice, low and commanding, saying, Don't tell them about the transfer. They wouldn't understand the way I do things. Gasps rippled. Rowan buried her face in her hands. Dana stopped the recording. Mr. Reeves, that was your voice? He nodded slowly. I was protecting my family from chaos. Christina's voice finally broke through, trembling but fierce. You mean protecting your pride? This single sentence pierces like a knife. It's not shouted, it's whispered, but it lands with the force of everything she's ever endured. The judge leaned back, pen tapping the bench. This court is starting to see a pattern, Mr. Reeves. Colton's composure faltered. His lawyer whispered frantically, but he didn't respond. His eyes darted to Rowan, pleading, but she wouldn't look at him. I loved all of them, he said suddenly. Everything I did was because I loved them. Dana replied softly. And yet, somehow, everyone you loved ended up afraid. The words hung in the air like smoke. Christina blinked back tears, but her chin didn't lower. Behind her, Jana whispered, "He doesn't even know what love is anymore." The judge cleared her throat. "Proceed." Dana nodded. "Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Marin Reeves." Marin rose, steady as stone. Her heels clicked against the tile with the rhythm of inevitability. Taking the stand, she folded her hands and looked straight ahead. "Mrs. Reeves," Dana began, "you were part of this family for 12 years. Can you tell the court what you witnessed in the months before Christina left?" Marin's voice was low, measured. "He told us that questioning him was questioning God. He'd gather us in the living room and remind us that obedience was love." Colton's face reddened. "That's not fair, Marin." She turned her gaze to him for the first time. "Neither was watching my sisters break while you smiled." The room went silent again. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to pause. Moments like this keep viewers glued. They crave the truth delivered without theatrics, just raw and undeniable pain. Donna continued, "Did you ever feel pressured to sign any documents related to family property?" Marin nodded. "Yes. He said it was routine, that it kept taxes simple. I didn't realize I'd signed away my share of the family home. Dana displayed another paper. "Is this your signature?" "It is." "And were you aware this deed transferred ownership to the Reeves Family Holdings Trust controlled solely by Mr. Reeves?" Marin's voice cracked. "No." The judge scribbled notes. Colton muttered something under his breath. The bailiff warned him once. The energy in the courtroom turned electric, anger and sorrow blending into something volatile. Christina stared at the ceiling, steadying herself. For years, she'd blamed herself for being the difficult one. Now the record told a different story. Dana rested her case for the day, but before she could sit, Colton stood abruptly. "Your Honor, I need to speak." His lawyer tugged his sleeve, but he shook free. "Let him," the judge said. Colton turned toward Christina. "You think I'm a monster, but none of you understand the sacrifice. Do you think it's easy keeping a family like this together?" "The world hated us. I had to make hard choices," Christina replied softly. "You made selfish ones." "No," he snapped. "I gave everything." The sound of his voice cracked, the echo filling every corner. For a moment, the courtroom wasn't just a courtroom, it was a living room again, the place where promises turned into ultimatums. This is the heartbeat of the story, the collision between justification and truth, where the audience can't look away because they recognize pieces of their own heartbreak in it. The judge intervened, tone firm but calm. "Mr. Reeves, this court isn't therapy." "Sit down." "That..." Colton obeyed, shoulders slumping as if decades of authority drained from him all at once. Outside, thunder rolled across the desert sky. The sound seeped faintly through the courthouse walls. Reporters exchanged glances. Something monumental had shifted, even if no verdict had yet been read. During recess, Christina stood by the window, watching the rain start to fall. Rowan approached hesitantly. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she whispered. Christina sighed. "I know. We were all trying to survive him." They stood in silence, the kind that feels like healing and grief at once. Then Rowan said, "He told me you'd never forgive me." Christina looked at her, eyes soft. "He doesn't decide who I forgive." The simplicity of it carried more power than any argument could. Back in the courtroom, the judge reconvened. "Tomorrow we begin closing statements," she announced. "Until then, I suggest all parties reflect on what family truly means." Her gavel fell with finality. Colton remained seated, staring at nothing, while his wives filed out one by one. Each step a quiet declaration of freedom. And as the doors close, the viewers can feel it in their chests. The calm before the next storm, the fragile moment where pain begins to turn into truth. The next morning broke sharp and silver, rain drying into steam on the courthouse steps as the fourth day of testimony got underway. Christina was the first to arrive, her reflection ghosting across the glass doors. She looked calmer, but the calm of someone who has already burned through every panic and found steel underneath. Inside, the benches were packed again, journalists whispering that new evidence had surfaced overnight, that a missing witness had been located. Colton sat at the defense table with dark rings beneath his eyes, his confidence leaking away like water through cracks. Dana Holt stood when the judge entered. "Your Honor," she said, voice measured but trembling with the energy of revelation. "The plaintiff calls Mr. Eli Vance to the stand." A collective gasp swept the room. Eli had been Colton's financial advisor for nearly a decade and had vanished from proceedings 2 weeks earlier. Now he walked in carrying a slim black folder, expression heavy. He swore the oath and sat down, the microphone humming faintly. "Mr. Vance?" Dana began. "You manage the Reeves family accounts, correct?" "Yeah," he said. "Did Mr. Reeves ever instruct you to move assets without the knowledge of his wives?" "Several times." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Specifically, Dana pressed, "Did he direct you to transfer communal funds to an offshore account labeled Pilgrim Holdings?" Eli nodded. "He said it was a temporary shelter to keep money safe from emotional volatility." Colton's lawyer shot up, objecting, but the judge overruled. Eli opened the folder, revealing copies of wire receipts. These total $800,000 over 3 years. Christina exhaled slowly, her eyes wet but determined, and that's when every viewer at home leans forward because the number is no longer abstract. It's the physical proof of trust betrayed, the kind of evidence that makes hearts pound even in silence. Dana turned to the jury box. "Mr. Reeves called it protection. My client calls it deception." Colton finally spoke, voice raw. "You don't know what it took to keep that family afloat. I was drowning, and none of them cared." "Ah," Dana shot back. "Drowning in control, maybe." The tension cracked. Colton slammed his palm on the table. The judge's gavel snapped through the noise. "Enough." She signaled Dana to continue. "Mr. Vance, was there ever discussion about falsifying property values before the separation?" He nodded again. "Yes. Mr. Reeves asked if we could lower reported valuations to make future claims harder." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Colton slumped back, realizing every word was another nail in the coffin of his credibility. The scenes of unraveling, not by force but by the truth, the cinematic gold, are met with satisfaction and sorrow in equal measure on the part of the audience. Dana finished her questioning, and the defense took its turn. Colton's lawyer tried to paint Eli as disgruntled, but each denial sounded weaker than the last. When the witness was dismissed, the judge called a short recess. Christina stepped into the hallway, her phone buzzing with messages from supporters and strangers alike. Jana joined her, whispering, "You're winning." Christina shook her head. "No one wins here. We just stop losing." The words carried the exhaustion of years. Through the glass doors, thunderclouds built again on the horizon. Back inside, the mood darkened. The judge reconvened and asked if there were further witnesses. Dana surprised everyone. "One more, Your Honor. A recording expert." Colton stiffened. The expert took the stand, explaining he had authenticated a hidden camera clip recovered from a home security backup that Christina never knew existed. On the screen appeared grainy footage from the family's old shared office. Colton stood by the filing cabinet, speaking to someone off-screen, his voice hard. "If they find out about the second trust, everything collapses. Destroy the paperwork." The clip ended. Gasps rippled again. Colton buried his face in his hands. It's in these seconds that emotion peaks. The audience can feel the weight of every lie, every late-night rationalization, crashing into daylight. The judge ordered a 10-minute break for counsel to regroup. Reporters sprinted outside to broadcast the revelation. When court resumed, Colton didn't look up. His attorney whispered, "We can still negotiate," but he didn't respond. Dana approached the bench quietly. "Your Honor, at this time the plaintiff moves to introduce the recovered clip as Exhibit F." "Admitted," said the judge. "The jury will consider it." Christina watched the clip replay once more, her past flashing before her eyes. Not only betrayal, but relief that finally it was visible to someone besides herself. As afternoon light slanted through the tall windows, Dana began her closing for the day. "This case was never about money," she said, pacing slowly. "It's about the invisible contracts between people who promised fairness and delivered fear. Every document, every recording, every tear tells us the same story. That power without accountability becomes abuse dressed in faith." Colton finally looked up, eyes rimmed red. "I loved you," he muttered toward Christina. She answered softly, "Then you should have listened when I said stop." The judge adjourned, but no one moved. Even the reporter stayed quiet, sensing that something larger than verdicts had happened here. Outside, the sky broke open, sheets of rain pounding the concrete. Christina stepped into it without an umbrella, the water cold and honest. She breathed deeply, almost smiling. This quiet release becomes the heartbeat of the episode. The moment tension turns into catharsis when viewers feel both drained and cleansed right alongside her. Behind her, Colton exited flanked by cameras saying nothing. His lawyer shielded him from questions, but the damage was done. Dana joined Christina under the courthouse awning. "Tomorrow's final arguments," she said. Christina nodded. "Tomorrow, we finish this." They exchanged a look, equal parts weariness and victory. The last flash of lightning lit the street, and for an instant the entire world seemed frozen between endings and beginnings. The courtroom was packed to its edges for the final day. Even the security guards had run out of standing room. The scent of coffee and nervous sweat clung to the air, and the hush before the proceedings began was so deep it felt like the walls themselves were listening. Christina sat at her table, hands folded, eyes closed, in a silent prayer that wasn't about winning. It was about finally being heard. Colton sat across from her, his once slick hair now unkempt, his tie loosened like a man halfway undone. The judge entered, and everyone rose. "Be seated," she said, her tone carrying both fatigue and finality. Dana Holt, steady as ever, rose for the plaintiff's closing argument. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, pacing slowly before the jury, "when we started this trial, you heard a man describe himself as a protector. You saw him smile, play the role of leader, husband, father, but over the past 2 weeks, you've seen what that leadership really looked like. Control disguised as care, silence demanded as loyalty, and love used as a weapon." The words landed heavy. Christina blinked back tears as images of the hidden camera footage replayed in her mind. And here's where every listener leans closer, because what they're hearing isn't just legal language. It's a story of love curdled into power, and it hits something primal in all of us. Dana continued, voice shaking just slightly now. "For years, my client believed she was building a home with a man who cherished her. Instead, she found herself in a structure built on fear and manipulation. And when she dared to question it, he moved her life savings offshore, erased her name from accounts, and called it faith." The defense shifted uncomfortably. Colton looked away, jaw tight. Dana placed her hands on the railing of the jury box. "This is not just a family falling apart. It's a system of control finally being named for what it is, and the truth, once spoken, cannot be unspoken." It was the turn of the defense now. Colton's attorney, Mr. Breen, came forward. "Your Honor, members of the jury, what you've witnessed is not abuse. It's a tragedy of misunderstanding. Mr. Reeves was a man under pressure, juggling responsibilities most of us couldn't bear. He made financial decisions out of fear, not malice. He may have erred, but he did so believing he was preserving his family's legacy." He gestured toward Colton, who sat hollow-eyed. "Does that make him a criminal or merely human?" The room went still. For a moment, even Dana looked uncertain, as if the defense's quiet tone carried some truth. Christina's heart thudded. She looked at Colton and saw not the man she married, but the boy he used to be, ambitious, desperate to be needed, terrified of losing control. The judge called for the recess before deliberation. The crowd broke into murmurs. Reporters scurried out to file live updates, camera flashes popping like distant lightning. Christina stepped into the hallway again, but this time she wasn't trembling. She walked to the restroom, splashed cold water on her face, and stared at her reflection. "You did it," she whispered, not meaning victory, but survival. Behind her, Dana appeared. "You ready for what comes next?" Christina nodded. "Whatever it is, it's mine this time." This moment of stillness between storms is the emotional heartbeat that keeps viewers glued. It's not about verdicts, it's about a woman reclaiming her voice after years of silence. 3 tense hours later, the jury filed back into the courtroom. The judge's clerk handed over the folded note. The judge unfolded it, scanning it quickly before nodding gravely. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" she asked. The 4-person stood. "We have, Your Honor." The gallery leaned forward, every breath held hostage. "In the case of Reeves versus Reeves," the 4-person read, "we find in favor of the plaintiff, Christina Reeves." A collective exhale swept the room. Christina's shoulders sagged, her eyes filled with tears. Colton's face went pale, then red, then blank. The judge thanked the jury and dismissed them, but the room stayed silent. Dana squeezed Christina's hand. "It's over," she whispered. Christina shook her head. "No, it's just beginning." Reporters exploded into motion, microphones thrust toward the front tables. Colton stood slowly, walked toward the bench, and said softly, "Your Honor, I'd like to make a statement." The judge hesitated, then nodded. He turned toward Christina. "I know you think I broke you," he said, voice trembling. "But the truth is, I broke myself trying to hold a family that didn't want me anymore. I lost control and I made choices I can't defend. I just want you to know, I see it now." Christina's expression didn't change, but her lips quivered. "Then maybe there's still hope for the truth, even if not for us." As Colton was led away, the rain outside picked up again, the kind after a storm that washes color back into the world. The courthouse emptied slowly. Donna boxed her files while Christina tarried by the defense table, her hand wandering across the wood grain as if to touch the ghost of every argument which had once lived there. She picked up one piece of paper, a photo slipped from one of Colton's binders. It was their family years ago, all smiles and matching sweaters. She folded it neatly and tucked it into her coat pocket. This tiny gesture keeps the audience from looking away. It's the glue between pain and forgiveness, ending in memory. She emerged into the rain, cameras flashing around her again, but she didn't turn away this time. She lifted her chin to them, water streaking her face like some sort of baptism. Reporters shouted questions, but her voice soared above theirs, certain and clear. No comment, just peace. She went down the courthouse steps, her shoes splashing through puddles, and for the first time in years, she didn't look back. That night, in her small apartment, Christina sat by the window and listened to the rain hit the glass. She thought of everything she'd lost, her marriage, her home, the years spent walking on eggshells, but also everything she'd found. Her courage, her truth, her voice. She whispered to the dark, "We survived." On the TV across the room, the news replayed snippets from the trial, her own face flashing on screen. She reached over, turned off the volume, and closed her eyes. Somewhere in the city, Colton was probably doing the same, sitting in silence with the wreckage of his own making. And maybe that was justice, not punishment, but reflection. At this point, the audience feels the last pulse of empathy and closure, a deep breath to say the storm has passed, but the scars will tell the story forever. The next morning, sunlight broke clean and gold. Christina stepped onto her balcony, breathing in the crisp air. A message buzzed on her phone from an unknown number. "Thank you for telling the truth. You spoke for more of us than you know." She smiled softly, setting the phone aside. The city below was already awake, indifferent and alive. For the first time, she felt part of it, not hidden, not silenced, but seen. Weeks had passed since the verdict, yet each echo of that final gavel still rippled through every nook and corner of Christina Reeves's life. The courthouse was empty, the news vans moved on to fresher scandals, but inside her, the silence was louder than the shouting could ever be. She woke early each morning, not from habit, but because sleep came in pieces now, fragmented by dreams of testimonies and faces she couldn't quite forget. The small apartment she rented above a bookstore felt both safe and foreign, its quiet ticking clock reminding her that freedom could feel like emptiness before it felt like peace. She spent her days working at a local community center, helping women who had walked paths too similar to her own. They recognized her sometimes, the woman from the case that had filled their screens, but they rarely said it out loud. They just met her eyes, nodded, and shared their stories. It is in this connection between survivor and survivor that an audience finds itself listening. It's proof that the storm meant something, that pain turned into purpose. She'd sit by the center's window on quiet afternoons watching the world move on, the same city that once whispered her name now barely noticing her existence, and she liked it that way. Meanwhile, Colton Reeves became a ghost of headlines. A man who had once commanded cameras, now reduced to a passing footnote on a financial crime blog. He had taken a plea deal on the offshore accounts, avoiding prison but losing nearly everything else. His house went up for sale, his business partners scattered, and his old circle of followers vanished like dust in sunlight. He moved into a small rental on the outskirts of town, where the blinds stayed drawn and the mailbox filled with unopened letters. Sometimes, late at night, he'd stand in the doorway of the empty kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, remembering the noise of a family that used to live there. He told himself he would make it right someday. That redemption wasn't a myth, but even he didn't believe the words anymore. And this is where the story holds viewers in. The human instinct to wonder if a fallen figure can truly rise again, or if some choices echo forever. Christina saw him once more after the trial at the cemetery on a gray Sunday morning to visit her mother's grave. She saw him standing a few rows away, staring down at a stone she couldn't read from a distance. For a heartbeat, she thought of walking the other way, but something in his posture stopped her, shoulders hunched, head bowed, no arrogance left. She approached quietly until he noticed her. He didn't flinch, just nodded once. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, voice rough with cold and something older. "I come every week," she replied. A pause stretched between them. "You look peaceful," he said. She smiled faintly. "You learn peace the same way you learn truth, one painful piece at a time." He nodded again, then turned away. She didn't watch him leave. The wind picked up, scattering dry leaves around their feet, and for the first time, she didn't feel hatred just distance, like a closed book that no longer needed rereading. This small, quiet encounter is riveting because it replaces rage with reflection. It is the emotional twist audiences want after chaos. Months later, Christina sat in a community meeting where a documentary producer had been invited to speak about turning real-life stories into awareness campaigns. When he spoke of her case, she froze, unsure whether to stay or slip out. Then he said, "It taught people that justice isn't just about verdicts. It's about survival." The audience applauded, and she felt something stir inside her. Gratitude, maybe even pride. Afterwards, the producer approached her, his eyes widening in recognition. "Would you ever consider helping others tell their stories?" he asked. She hesitated. "I'm not sure I'm ready for cameras again." He smiled kindly. "Then don't face them. Help others face them instead." That night, she drafted the first outline of a program she called the Rebuild Project, a mentorship initiative for women rebuilding their lives after coercive relationships. The work was slow, emotional, and messy, but it gave her mornings purpose, again. Every time she sat across from a new participant, she remembered her own trembling voice on the witness stand and thought, "This is how the healing continues." Moments like this recharge viewer emotion. It's transformation, not perfection, that keeps them rooting for her. Back in Colton's small rented house, dust gathered on the empty nail holes where family photos once hung. He had started seeing a counselor court-ordered at first, but over time, voluntary. Sessions were awkward, long silences, half answers, but the counselor's calm persistence chipped at his defenses. One day she asked, "If you could tell Christina one true thing, what would it be?" He thought for a long moment. "That I finally understand what she meant about listening." The counselor nodded. "Maybe write it down." That night he did. The letter was simple, handwritten, and never sent. He kept it folded in a drawer beside his bed, not as a plea, but as proof that regret could grow into responsibility. And here's where the story deepens. Viewers lean forward because even redemption, when hinted at quietly, keeps hope alive. As spring returned, the Rebuild Project hosted its first official event, a workshop in the same courthouse where Christina had once fought her case. She walked through those marble halls with new steadiness, memories flickering but no longer haunting. The judge who had presided over her case attended the event and smiled warmly. "You've turned testimony into teaching," she said. Christina replied, "I think we all just needed a better ending." Reporters covered the event, but this time the focus wasn't on scandal. It was on survival. By afternoon, the old courtroom was filled with laughter, soft music, and stories of women starting again. Christina stood by the windows where sunlight pooled, watching them talk and smile. For the first time in a long while, she realized she wasn't telling her story anymore. She was helping others write theirs. This transformation is the heartbeat of engagement, the moment an audience shifts from watching tragedy to witnessing triumph. Outside, Colton watched from across the street, unseen among the crowd. He didn't approach. He knew his presence would only sour the day. But when he saw her smile, genuine and unguarded, something inside him unclenched. He turned and walked away, the weight on his shoulders a little lighter than before. That night, he anonymously donated to the Rebuild Project, a modest sum, but a gesture that spoke louder than apologies ever could. Christina saw the notification on the donation page later, labeled only from a friend. She stared at it for a long moment, then whispered, "Thank you," to the empty room. She didn't need to know if it was him. Some stories, she realized, didn't need closure, they just needed peace. The following summer, Christina moved into a small cottage by the coast. Every evening, she'd walk along the beach barefoot, waves curling around her ankles, the air clean and endless. She'd started writing again, this time a memoir. Not about the trial, but about what came after. She wrote about mornings filled with coffee and sunlight, about laughter slowly finding its way back into her life, about the sound of her own voice reading to children at the community center. Her final chapter ended not with a victory, but with a sentence she believed with her whole heart. Healing isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering without pain. And this is the kind of quiet, meaningful resolution that keeps audiences thinking long after the credits fade. One evening, as she watched the sun dip below the horizon, her computer buzzed with an email from a woman in another state who had watched the trial online. It said, "I left because you did. Thank you for showing me that courage doesn't mean winning, it just means walking away." Christina smiled, tears warming her eyes. She closed the laptop and whispered to the wind, "Then it was all worth it." Far away, the rumble of thunder rolled over the water, not intimidating this time, reminding her how far she had come. She lifted her face to the breeze, eyes closed, heart steady. Somewhere out there, perhaps, Colton was finding his own version of truth, quieter and lonelier, but still truth. And that was enough. The autumn air held a hush of maturity, as if the whole city had aged with Christina Reeves and learned to breathe again at her pace. The rebuild project was now more than a shelter. It was a movement, dozens of centers across 3 states, each filled with the soft thunder of women telling the truth out loud for the first time. Christina no longer sat in the back of those rooms. She stood at the front, sleeves rolled up, voice calm and measured. Her words were practiced but never rehearsed. "You are not what happened to you," she would say, looking into faces that trembled with the same fear she once carried. "You're what you choose to become afterward." The crowd always went silent, and in that silence she felt the pulse of something larger than victory, continuance. This is the heartbeat of engagement, the transformation that keeps an audience watching, needing to see how survival becomes leadership. But late at night, after the applause had faded and the lights were dimmed, she sometimes found herself staring at the ocean outside her window, her mind wandering to whether forgiveness was a duty or a gift. She told herself it did not matter anymore, but the truth lingered like a low tide that always returned. One afternoon, a letter arrived on the office desk. No return address, handwriting careful but uncertain. She hesitated before opening it, already guessing who it was from. "I'm not asking for anything," it began. "Just wanted you to know I'm still listening." No name, no signature, but she folded it once and placed it in the drawer beside her journal. She didn't need to reply. The silence between them had finally become enough. An exchange of this nature pulls listeners closer. It's not confrontation that grips them now, it's restraint, the unspoken dialogue between 2 changed souls. Over the next several months, Christina's work received national attention. Documentaries, podcasts, speaking invitations. The world wanted her story again, but she handled it differently this time, choosing carefully what to share. When one interviewer asked, "If you could speak to the person who hurt you, what would you say?" She smiled softly and answered, "Thank you. Because of you, I learned what never to become." The quote went viral, and overnight donations flooded in. Meanwhile, Colton had begun quietly volunteering at a halfway home for men exiting controlling groups. He never spoke of his past. He only listened, fixed leaks, painted walls, brought coffee to the newcomers. The staff knew his history, but they also saw his consistency. Redemption wasn't grand. It was repetitive work, done in silence. On the advice of his therapist, he began to journal. 1 line a day on accountability. There were nights when, midpoint in a sentence, he'd halt and stare at the page as if words could rebuild what pride had destroyed. This is the balance of dual redemption that keeps viewers hanging, because empathy isn't about who was right, it is about who changes. A year later, the Rebuild Project announced its most ambitious event to date, a statewide conference on recovery and leadership. Christina spent weeks planning every detail, guest speakers, survivor panels, workshops. On opening day, the old courthouse auditorium was filled again, not with lawyers, but with laughter. During a break, she stepped outside for air, the same marble steps beneath her heels. She didn't see the man across the street at first, tall, older, a little stooped, holding a small donation box marked Community Renewal Fund. When she finally noticed him, he nodded once. She nodded back. No words, no need. Then she turned and walked inside to give her keynote speech. "We measure healing in days, in years, in choices," she said. "And sometimes the proof that we've healed is the ability to walk past what once broke us." The audience rose in applause that filled the rafters. This scene holds viewers to the end. It's the cinematic echo of everything they've waited for. Acknowledgement without repetition, peace instead of revenge. Christina sat by her window that night, watching street lamps flicker on like quiet stars as night cast a blanket of darkness across the city. She thought about all the women she had met and all those stories she had helped lift into the air. A soft gratitude blossomed in her chest. On the radio, a reporter spoke about the growing number of restorative programs being inspired by her trial. She turned down the volume, smiled, and whispered, "We did it." Somewhere miles away, Colton closed his own notebook and looked toward the horizon, exhaling a breath that finally sounded free. Winter came back quiet, softer than the last, snow drifting across the coastal town where Christina Reeves now lived. The rebuild project had flourished beyond anything she'd imagined. What started as one small office above a bookstore was now a network of shelters, mentoring programs, and online communities spanning multiple states. Each morning, she woke before daybreak, brewed her coffee, and walked the shoreline wrapped in a wool coat, the waves reminding her that movement could be steady and calm. She stopped counting days since the trial. Her body remembered freedom the way lungs remember air. This quiet opening pulls viewers back in, reminding them that peace isn't static. It's an earned rhythm that keeps a story alive long after the shouting ends. Every evening, she wrote letters, not to anyone in particular, just reflections she folded into a journal. "The hardest part of healing," she wrote one night, "is realizing it doesn't erase the past. It teaches you to live beside it." She smiled at that line, underlined it twice, and turned the page. That same winter, Colton took on a job repairing small boats at a marina outside of town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. He liked the smell of oil and salt, the way the tide erased footprints faster than guilt could. Some knew who he was, others simply did not care. He mostly kept to himself, except when the storm rolled in and teamwork was necessary, with lives depending on the saving of boats. Then he found purpose again. During his lunch breaks, he read letters he had written to himself over the months, notes about accountability, patience, and the fragile art of staying quiet. It's this dual reflection that keeps an audience tethered, the realization that redemption and recovery can exist on opposite shores of the same ocean. One day, early in spring, a letter arrived from the state for Christina, an invitation to speak at a national summit on justice reform. She hesitated. A part of her was afraid to step into another spotlight. Then she remembered the women whose stories still waited to be told. "We can't stay small just because we were once silenced," she said to the staff one afternoon. They agreed. 2 months later, she was on a plane headed for the capital, staring out the window as clouds drifted beneath her, thinking of how far she traveled without ever truly leaving the same emotional ground. The hall was huge, lit with cameras and microphones, but she spoke as if talking to one friend. "Justice," she told the crowd, "isn't a verdict, but it's the ongoing work of empathy, the courage to listen without needing to win." The room erupted in applause. And this is where attention deepens. Viewers feel the closure not as an ending, but as evolution, a sense that every scar has turned into a story worth sharing. Back home, Colton watched the broadcast from a small television in his rented room. He didn't change the channel. When her face appeared, he sat straighter, listening to every word. When she finished, he whispered, "Good," not as approval, but as recognition. The next day, he mailed a final letter, unsigned as always, containing a short note. "I finally understand listening. Thank you for teaching me, even when I didn't deserve it." Christina received it a week later, and this time, she didn't fold it away. She burned it carefully in the fireplace, watching the paper curl into ash, then opened the window to let the smoke drift out toward the sea. "Goodbye," she said softly but without sorrow. This image of letting go acts as the narrative's heartbeat. Audiences feel the weight lifting, the beauty of closure born from choice, not chance. That summer, the Rebuild Project hosted its first retreat in a mountain lodge. Women from across the country came together, sharing stories by firelight. Christina listened more than she spoke. Her role shifted from survivor to witness, from voice to listener. One evening, a young woman turned to her and asked, "Do you ever stop remembering?" Christina smiled softly. "You stop hurting," she said, "but you never stop remembering." Memory is how we measure growth. The woman nodded, her tears glinting in the light, and Christina felt that same warmth she'd once mistaken for pain. It was connection, real and steady. On the last night of the retreat, Christina stood on the balcony watching stars scatter across the sky. The air was crisp, filled with pine and the distant laughter from the women below. She thought about the strange symmetry of life, how the man who once silenced her had inadvertently sparked a movement that gave voice to hundreds. She didn't hate him anymore. She didn't need to forgive him either. The story had outgrown both of them. She whispered, "We made it," into the night, and for a moment she thought she heard the wind answer. And this final reflection keeps audiences anchored because the truest ending isn't revenge or reunion. It's peace that finally stays. Months later, Christina's memoir was published. She called it Listening to the Quiet. It wasn't a bestseller overnight, but readers passed it hand to hand, quoting lines that resonated in quiet kitchens and therapy rooms. In one chapter, she wrote, "We think closure is a door slamming. It's not. It's a window opening, and the courage to look out instead of back. Critics called it understated and luminous. She just called it honest." When the first royalty check arrived, she used it to open a scholarship fund for children of domestic survivors. A new generation learning through safety instead of fear. The following spring, she returned once more to the courthouse, not for a trial, but to give a keynote at a law school graduation. Standing behind the same wooden podium that once towered over her, she looked out at the sea of eager faces and said, "The law gives us order. Compassion gives us justice. Never forget which one people need first." The applause thundered, echoing through the hall like a cleansing wave. Afterward, she stepped outside, the sun bright against the marble steps, and paused. For a long moment, she stood there, breathing in the warmth, the hum of a city moving around her, and she smiled, a full, unguarded smile. This is the kind of closing beat that holds viewers through the credits, the gentle proof that even the deepest scars can become light when carried with grace. And as dusk fell over the city, both Christina and Colton, in their separate worlds, found themselves watching the same horizon. Neither knew of the other's view, yet both felt the same quiet certainty that the story they once shared no longer bound them. It freed them. The world had moved on, but so had they.